Hey guys, Filthy here, talking about how to beat dire wolves. So dire wolves are actually a very, very threatening early game enemy and a pretty weak late game enemy. The really defining factor for beating dire wolves is a decent amount of armor and or melee defense. Dire wolves, there's two types of dire wolves and frenzy dire wolves. Frenzy dire wolves are the tier 2 variant, and they have an overwhelm effect, which is really, really nasty. Super high initiative and triple attack means you can get very easily overrun by the overwhelm effect. Dire wolves are very high initiative as well, so if you spawn near high terrain, which you can't control, if they get elevated terrain on you, it can be very, very dangerous. In early game, they just decimate your brothers. Their archers are particularly bad versus them. A, positioning is tough to deal with dire wolves. You don't control the positioning. B, your archers in the early game aren't very accurate, and C, that you just need to do damage to dire wolves rapidly. The setup for dire wolves is very similar to spiders. If you know you're going to be fighting dire wolves, you want a number of accuracy-based weapons. I think shields are more important in this fight than they are versus spiders. Spiders don't actually do very high damage, so you can afford to have the damage bonus that you get from having no shield. But versus dire wolves do a lot of damage, and they will kill your brothers and become confident. What you want to do is break dire wolves' morale. Like a lot of early game opponents, and a lot of beasts in particular, their morale is kind of bad. The goal is to focus damage on people to break their morale to save your brothers from dying to high initiative overwhelm attacks. This fight doesn't go particularly well for us versus dire wolves. We have a lot of archers, which aren't good versus them. Ideally, we would have one-handed swords, one-handed cleavers, one-handed spears, and a fair number of melee brothers and a very small number of back rankers. If we do have back rankers, we prefer they be like pike-based weapons, not archer range-based weapons. But that's not what we had in this playthrough when we took this. This is an early contract. You can't really avoid it, or an early escort mission or something like that, so you're just stuck with it. Positioning, you don't get to go first unless you have either the deserter background or impatient. If you can get a spear wall off, that's great, but most of the time you'll be unable to do so. Sometimes they don't engage all the way up to the sides, so you can get a spear wall for round 2, which is okay. In general, try to put your tankiest brothers on the corner. They will have the most number of dire wolves surrounding them. Try to focus fire as rapidly as possible and clear out areas. So if you have rotate, it can be very helpful to kill the guys surrounding your rotating brother, so the rotating brother can go save the corner because the corner is about to die. In the early game, just use a blade of plating. This is a term I use for brothers who are very bad, who are you're happy to have die, but fill the role in the early game of being just a warm body on the field. Put them on the corners because dire wolves will kill people, and it's okay to lose people if you have to lose people to accomplish objectives, and you'd rather have you know where the damage is going to be, where you're going to get mostly surrounded in these fights. Dire wolves are very the fight is very snowbally. If you do poorly and they get a couple kills early, you probably just lose. So be careful of trying to fight dire wolves in the very early game. Choose wisely when you want to take these missions. They have very low reward and fairly high risk in the early game. Yes, you get pelts, and pelts are decent for crafting the attachment, but you don't get direct armor upgrades or weapon upgrades, which means in the very early game, this is a fairly low value fight, and it's a fairly high risk fight. Later, they're very easy to farm. You can fight large numbers of them. The only thing you have to worry about is overwhelm. AoE attacks are good. High armor is good. Things of that nature can be very, very powerful versus dire wolves. But in the early game, this is a tricky fight, and it's not something that's really inside your control. The best you can do is use adjacency bonuses for attacking bonuses, focus fire as much as possible, work on trying to break their morale, so attack ones that have breaking morale as much as possible, try to hit spread damage. It's better to spread damage and break morale as much as possible than necessarily to kill wounded ones. Try to get multiple morale checks by, for example, moving next to them and possibly killing one that's already breaking it to just cause a morale check. Remember, the morale checks happen from a couple things. You can cause individual morale checks on a given opponent by doing damage to it. You can cause individual morale checks on a given opponent by moving next to it, and you can cause morale checks on all enemies by killing one of their enemy types. So by killing a dire wolf, you will cause all the other dire wolves to make a morale check. So these types of things can be used to your advantage to trying to break them. But there's not a whole lot you can do necessarily versus this except have gear. So this is another one of these gear check fights that you need to be worried about going into it. All right, hopefully that breakdown was relatively helpful. And I'll leave you guys to the tender mercies of this clip. Enjoy the blood. See you guys soon. I don't think dodge is a very good set, but maybe it could be okay. It's time for Andre to meet the front lines. You go, Andre, you go. Should stop accumulating wonky bows is the only thing. Okay. It's tough to want to throw away this dude. Alright, so if the wolves gank us now, at least have a little bit of fodder. They do want to gank us. It's not a good wolf fighting. I want to like put them in the 3rd rank. Okay, some direwolves is going to be rough. I need the peasants to make their moves, preferably forward, so I can determine what I need to do with my archers. Was that the 75 HP lumberjack? No. God, good work, peasants. Good fucking work. This was not a good round for us. I don't think we can break any more of them, though. I worry about some of our archers here. Fucking direwolves. Oh, hit him but didn't stun him. Feels bad. Shit. Double breaks there. It just fucking rallied and killed 2 people because it was standing next, or killed a person because it was standing next to them. Come on, man. I thought I had all the rallies covered. Fucking direwolves are so stupid. Why aren't you guys helping here? Ah, that sucks. All right, I don't know I don't know the damage yet. I'm sure it's not great. Oh shit. Bullshit. It's elevated. It's going to kill somebody else. He rallied with an enemy so close because both my guys are panicked. They don't count. It's over. It's fine. You can leave. Sui, Pakas, Andre, Keljastad. Alright, I mean, that's the ablative stuff, but that's a lot of deaths. Because a fucking 6-pack of direwolves won't piss off. So brutal.